Today at Ignite, Microsoft just announced that SharePoint Advanced Management is going to be included with your M365 licensing. It is going to be free. In this video, we're going to cover what SharePoint Advanced Management even is, why I think Microsoft made this change, and what you need to do next. Let's get into it. So first, why did they even make this change? Well, customers were already paying for Copilot. Why add another 10% to that cost just to prepare for Copilot, just to maintain the data security that you've got for your Copilot infrastructure and just for SharePoint and OneDrive in general? Well, I think that there were a lot of complaints by customers that maybe they feel like they were getting nickel and dimes to death, something like that. Microsoft finally said, you know what, let's just give this away for free. I think they believe it's going to increase adoption of Copilot. More people are going to be able to take that plunge into AI, knowing that they're going to get a lot more management features, knowing that Microsoft's going to give them those tools included to help them prepare and maintain their data for AI. Now, SharePoint Advanced Management does have a tremendous amount of things to help people prepare for Copilot deployment and Copilot adoption, and of course, maintaining security while Copilot is in use. That's not the only point of SharePoint Advanced Management, though. There's a lot more things in here so that once you do have Copilot deployed everywhere, you're able to manage all that information. You're able to see where you've got some vulnerable points in your security, in the life cycle of SharePoint sites, and you're able to address those things without having to buy third-party tools and things like that. It's all kind of included, and there's actually a lot of development being done within SharePoint Advanced Management, or SAM for short. And there's a lot of stuff coming out. There's a lot of stuff in private preview, public preview. There's a lot of movement in general with this suite of tools. Now, I'm going to summarize what all of these different tools are. I've kind of broken them apart in my head into some major categories, but I'm just going to be touching on all of these things to help you understand this, because every single one of these features deserves a video. I've made several already on my channel. You'll see a SharePoint Advanced Management playlist available to see all of those videos. I'm going to continue to make a lot more content on this stuff because it's going to be incredibly important from today onward, because again, you've already paid for this. So to make sure you stay up to date on all of these SAM videos that I'm putting out, make sure you subscribe to this channel. But let's just jump straight into this first feature, and that's the most applicable to Copilot, and that is going to be restricted content discovery. Now, what this thing does is it's going to restrict what SharePoint sites that Copilot can get access to summarize data. If that sounds familiar, you might be thinking of restricted SharePoint search. They're like two sides of the same coin. So they are both designed to tackle restricting search and Copilot to a specific set of sites. The difference is restricted content discovery is a blacklist approach. You're going to identify the sites where you don't want Copilot to be able to summarize information from. So you're going to block it from Copilot. Restricted SharePoint search is the opposite. You're identifying the sites you do want Copilot to summarize and have access to that data. So one is a blacklist, one is a whitelist. The key thing here is that the restricted SharePoint search, which is the earlier one that was announced, that is a temporary measure. You could only apply it to a 100 site. So for instance, if you have 100 sites in your intranet, or up to that, you would identify those sites as an example to whitelist so that Copilot can summarize information from those 100 sites and nothing else. Restricted content discovery, you're identifying the sites you don't want Copilot to access. So that could be more sensitive sites or things that just don't maybe have older content, and Copilot keeps trying to serve content from those sites. So you could just blacklist those sites so that they're excluded and everything else is good. Restricted content discovery is a long-term solution. Restricted SharePoint search is a short-term solution. One other thing to note is restricted content discovery. It is a PowerShell command, so you will have to be in PowerShell to apply this feature. And some of the others in SAM are as well. Some of these other features, you'll be in PowerShell to apply these to particular sites, to particular OneDrive accounts, things like that. Now we get into what the category I call access controls within SharePoint Advanced Management. These are going to be things that are going to quickly lock down control or lock down access for particular SharePoint and OneDrive resources. The first one is going to be the block download policy. If you've wondered on a document library, how do you stop people from downloading the file? The quickest way without them being able to circumvent that is going to be this block download policy. It's a PowerShell command as well. You're going to be applying this to a particular location, and users will be able to view everything within the browser, but they will not be able to download, print, any sort of a trick to try and get that content outside of SharePoint. They won't be able to do any of that. The next part of access control within SAM are conditional access policies for OneDrive and SharePoint. So as the name implies, you can apply it to either OneDrive or SharePoint, and it's going to be similar to the conditional access you may be familiar with within Azure, because it's essentially the same thing, except that at the Azure level, you're applying it at a very broad level, like all resources. With this one, you can apply it to particular OneDrive accounts, particular SharePoint sites, and so you can get the granular control. So maybe you want to require MFA on a particular site that has more sensitive data. Maybe you want to restrict access to particular geographic regions. So you have to be within the boundaries of a particular country to access certain resources. That's what that particular feature will let you do. Next, you have the default sensitivity labels for a particular document library. Now, this is going to allow you to set a default sensitivity label for all files in a document library. So as things are added, if someone doesn't set a different label, or if you don't have a Purview label policy that's going to apply a higher level of sensitivity to a particular file, then this will automatically apply. And this can be done on a per library basis. It's that granular. Very, very cool. And it's going to really ensure that libraries at least have maybe an internal only label or some sort of thing like that, so that by default, a certain level of protection will always be applied to the files in that library. Next, you've got the rack policies. Now, this is restricted access control. This is a layer of access control that administrators can apply to particular sites. This is very, very powerful. And what it does is it will override anything that the site admin has applied to the site, any sharing they've done, and any sharing that the site members have applied. You probably are aware that if you do some sharing links, if you create those sharing links and send them out, you're actually blocking inheritance. You could be introducing oversharing into the situation where files are shared with a much broader amount of people than it really should be. This is a big concern for all Copilot customers and something that they are struggling to deal with right now. What this will let you do as an administrator is say, for this particular SharePoint site or OneDrive site, only let the people in to see content or even access the site if they're a member of this M365 group or this Intra ID group. So you can quickly clamp down security on a site or OneDrive account to really, in my view, give the site owner some time to start working on the cleaning up of that. Or it's a way to ensure that content cannot ever be shared outside of a certain boundary, like a particular department, a particular division, or just outside of the organization in general. If you have certain scenarios where you have the anyone links allowed. So this is a very, very powerful tool and a very popular one to clamp down on sites and OneDrive accounts. Now, next we move into the data access governance section of features. These are going to be a lot of reports that will make sure that you are compliant with regulatory statutes and other security measures like that. It's designed to monitor your situation. You should be reviewing these on a regular basis to get an idea of what's happening with your environment. This is how you're going to be able to track things like sharing links, which I've covered recently on my channel. So sharing links is one of those reports inside the data access governance. This is going to let you understand how many sharing links have been created on a site. If you start seeing high numbers of these things, you could have some potential for oversharing already, because a lot of people like to share with very big groups of people instead of just specifying individuals. So this really is going to help you keep track of that. Next, you have the report to see when sensitivity labels are applied to files. This is going to help you track when you've got files that have been identified by Purview or by users as sensitive data. And this will help you stay aware of where you have sensitive data at. If you have it on a particular site that a lot of people have access to, or external people have access to, guest accounts have access to. If it's that big of an audience that can get access to this data and you have sensitive data, you definitely want to be aware of that, and you may want to take action. Next, you've got the report to see which content has been shared with this special group called everyone except external users. So this is similar to the everyone group that we used to have back in the on-premises days of SharePoint. And what this lets you see is who has shared content with everyone in the organization. Now, in some cases, that's perfectly fine. In a lot of cases, that is not the correct way to share information. It is a little too broad. It needs to be targeted to a smaller group of people to make sure that only the right people are seeing this content. And this is really important because a user may not know that they have access to that file, but think about Copilot. This is incredibly good at knowing where all the files are that you, the user using Copilot, have access to. It knows about all of that, and so it will be more than happy to bring back data and summarize it and present that information to you, even if you don't know that the file exists. This is why oversharing, which is what a lot of data access governance reports handle, it's why oversharing has to be tackled. You want to be tackling this as you're preparing for Copilot. You want to tackle this as you're using Copilot. You want to make sure you are staying up to date with how data is being used and especially shared to make sure it's not overshared. Now, this particular report can also be run on both SharePoint and OneDrive sites. So don't think that this is just SharePoint because it's SharePoint Advanced Management. Many of these things will also apply to OneDrive because, of course, OneDrive is really just running on SharePoint. Oh, and another cool feature with these data access governance reports is you can from those reports quickly lock down or apply that RAC policy, restricted access control, to a particular site. So if you see a ton of oversharing happening, and you think, hey, this could be a risk for us, let's just clamp down right now and then allow us to have some time to dive into what's happening and then start adjusting things there. But maybe we just need to get a quick application of security while we're checking this stuff out. You can apply the RAC policy from within these reports. So a lot of these tools will tie together to help you take action on the issues that you are being presented with, what these reports are showing. Now we move into the site lifecycle management tools. Now this is going to help you to maintain the content sprawl on your environment, or more importantly, control that content sprawl. Now these are going to be policies that you're going to be creating to handle things like inactive sites. There is one policy that you can create. This is going to find all those sites that haven't been used, nothing's been modified, no one's accessed it in a certain amount of time. It could be 3 months, it could be 3 years. That level of control is really entirely up to you. And what'll happen with these is it will actually contact those site owners to say, hey, do you still need this site? That's kind of what it's asking. So it will actually proactively try and either refresh this content, or eventually it will let you take action on an inactive site. That could be archiving the site, for instance, if you're using M365 Archive. So it will do a lot of cleanup in an automated fashion, which is very, very cool. Or another option for this is you're able to just mark that as read-only, that whole site. So you have some options, or you could do nothing with that site and you just want to make sure the site owner gets involved or lets you know this can be deleted. Another really important one that I think every single SharePoint admin will love is the site ownership policy. This is going to let you identify all those abandoned SharePoint sites or the sites that could soon be abandoned. Here's what I mean. With this policy, you'll define a certain number of site owners per site. As turnover happens within an organization, site owners will leave the organization. That's one less site owner for that particular site. At some point, it's going to get down to zero if no one actually lets you know that the site owners need to be updated. Here's the new list, something like that. Or they go in and maintain their own site ownership. Kind of rare, isn't it? But this will handle those particular scenarios where the sites do not have the correct or the minimum number of owners. This will send a notification at a certain threshold to find new site owners or admins automatically. So very powerful stuff to make sure that people are maintaining your SharePoint sites and you have ownership. The ownership is maintained for that particular SharePoint site because you're a SharePoint admin, more than likely, you don't want to do this yourself, right? Now let's move into the change history. This is it's an interesting one. I think it's going to be really popular from an auditing perspective, or to be able to make the auditors maybe a little bit more happy. They're never quite very happy, but at least they'll be a little bit more happy. What the change history features of SAM will let you do is, number one, you can see the actions made by yourself. What administrative changes have you made to the SharePoint environment, whether either an organization level setting change or a site level administrative change, like maybe changing the site owners out, updating groups, things like that. You see that level of detail for yourself. The other one is the change history report. So before it was the recent actions report when you only see your recent actions. The change history report will let you see actions made by everybody, or you can have a little bit of control on maybe narrowing the scope of that, but it's all the administrative changes made by any administrator, again, either to org-wide settings or to site level settings. So you have some visibility there for what's been happening in the environment. If there is a breaking change and all of a sudden people can't share the way they used to, the change history report's actually going to be pretty good to see, hey, did somebody update this, and maybe check in with that person and see what was going on, what decision led to that change, so that you're not going to fix the sharing settings and then make someone else over here upset because, well, they needed those settings changed, which does happen. So these change history reports are going to be really powerful to just get awareness in large organizations where you have multiple administrators to see what's happening and who made those changes. Now we go to the AI Insights section of this video. Now, as AI has infiltrated pretty much every aspect of our lives, it was bound to come into SharePoint Advanced Management as well, because you're going to get all these reports and you may or may not understand what they're trying to tell you. That's what AI Insights is actually here for. So within a lot of these reports, especially the data access governance reports, there'll be an AI Insights button. You could click that and it will analyze the data for you. It'll let you know, hey, here's this site here that has a lot of oversharing, but maybe there's no sensitivity labels applied. This may not be that big of an issue. Or maybe there's a pattern in the data and the AI Insights feature is there to point out, hey, here is a pattern that we're seeing. This may be an issue. You should look into this. If you're not that great with looking through these reports and understanding what it is the data is telling you, this feature is going to be one of your favorites, and it's going to continue to roll out to a lot of the features within SharePoint Advanced Management. Now, what do you need to do next? Now that we've covered all these features, at least the ones that are out today, a lot more will be coming. Now, what you need to do next is SAM is probably still going to require everyone to have a license. Now, the license is now part of M365 Copilot, but more than likely, you will still have to have a license for everyone in your organization. If you've already planned on assigning all the non-guest users a license to Copilot, you'll be good. Otherwise, you want to double check on whether everyone has to have that license, because Before, with SharePoint Advanced Management, every user did have to be licensed. Next, you're going to start reviewing these features in SAM to figure out which ones will give you the best immediate value. Now, you have a lot of resources for that. There's Microsoft Learn. There's all my videos that I've covered SharePoint Advanced Management with. I've got blog posts, and there's others in the Microsoft community that have put out a lot of content as well. Watch the roadmap as well, the M365 roadmap. There's where all the announcements are of what features are going to be coming to SAM. Now, if you don't want to constantly be checking back with that, I've got a newsletter that is completely free, and I cover all of these features and what they're going to do for you, as well as when those things are going to start rolling out, because that's what is the most exciting for us, is when we can start playing around with these and getting some value. So check the link in the description below for that newsletter. And if you want to see more SharePoint Advanced Management content, then click or tap the screen to get started with my playlist.